Hey y'all, welcome. This is Collapse Talk, and this is Gabriel Marrero, and I'm glad you could join me. This is a bit of a different time that I'm recording. It seems that I've made quite a big break, and I've been doing a lot of work with this show, and it's finally good to get some attention, though I wasn't expecting to get that much attention from that tweet. Yeah, like millions of people saw that, and I think I just started a bit of a meme, so like I wasn't expecting that at all. Um, yeah, I really just reposted that, honestly. Like it was I saw that from Our Boring Dystopia, and I'll admit I just like knee jerk reacted and posted it because I mean anybody who knows what's happening in Detroit knows that's a valid situation. So I just felt I would repost it, and yeah, from there it exploded. I don't even think it was from me saying that because like I've said all kinds of like things online on Twitter, very inflammatory stuff. But I think it had more to do with just because it was getting attention, and then people, of course, making fun of it and saying that I doctored it or that it was reversed or I'm spreading misinformation or whatever. And then probably the people who have to who've actually seen this, who have actually lived through this and seen this in their own communities, they were like, what? Like they of course like had to respond there. So yeah, I kind of just like pulled the pin off a grenade. But I'm glad at least we could talk about it at least, and some people saw it. Some people who aren't really politically active were just like, "Whoa, is this real?" And it's just like, yeah, yeah, it is. Although it's just like it's kind of disappointing that like we're having the conversation because I posted it and I'm nobody. I'm just a shit poster online. Like this, like anybody who like understands like what's happening would have said this, and yeah. I don't know. And then some people were just like saying like, "Oh, well, that's just Detroit, dude. Like, I don't know what you're. That's not America." And it's just like, bro, like, Detroit used to be the industrial center of the country, and then look what's happened. How did you think it got there? So that's all I really have to say there. Yeah, but I'm just glad y'all can join me, and then we could just start this program because again, I thought I was gonna like kind of gradually grow an audience over time, and it would go from like a couple dozen to a couple hundred, and then eventually like maybe 1,000, 2,000. But now I'm like on Twitter like 7,000 followers, and it's kind of crazy. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm really glad because I've been doing a lot of work, and uh, I've been sacrificing a lot, and like this pandemic like has been a real fight for survival, and I've had to deal with all kinds of doubters and people trying to gaslight me, and saying that like this isn't going to go anywhere. You're just going to scare people, and again this is the only thing that I got going. This is like the only thing that I'm good at, that I understand, and I'm just gonna do it because it like nobody else is doing it. So yeah, that's just about it. So this summer should be good because I do have a job, and I was kind of like lamenting about it because I thought I was gonna have to do like 40 hours straight for every week, and just like burn myself out. But now that I have a big break with this program, I can start doing part-time work and, actually focus on this and just, yeah, do the program, do the podcast, do videos. And yeah, all I can say, is just that, all I would need is just y'all support. I have the Patreon, I do have sponsorships. And so, I'm releasing this episode publicly for now since I have a wider audience, but moving forward, I will be doing early releases on the Patreon. So, I'll be linking that on Twitter and such. So yeah, I mean just $1. That's all I ask because again like I'm in the trenches, bro. Like it's not easy out here, and it's definitely like the bombs could drop tomorrow and I could rest easy knowing that like I made some kind of breakthrough. So that's all I ask. So yeah, but anyway, just for those who are just starting to get with me in this program, just understand like what I'm about, because the last two episodes I've been focusing very heavily on the Ukraine crisis, and so that's not really how I do my program. I usually divide it in different sections, and it covers the U.S. Situation, international geopolitics, and then also just the environment and natural events. So that's what I'm going to do with this program today, like actually focusing on the actual program. So yeah, I just I just want to put that out there. Although, like, if some of y'all, keep diving deeper into the program, it's very cringy. Like at a certain point, I was kind of floating the idea of crypto, and of course now, like, seeing the markets, how things have fallen, like, it's pretty foolish of me. And, I'm like the kind of person that, like, just because something is new, I don't want to immediately discredit it. But yeah, as I kept, diving deeper into it and, understanding it, I was just like, okay, like months ago, I liquidated everything months ago. So like nothing, I haven't lost anything with this crash. So yeah, yeah. And then also like with this Ukraine war, like I kind of floated the idea of like, oh, I'm going to go abroad if they invade Finland or something. And, that was before I made my big break, because I was just thinking like, okay, I'm just going to do this and nobody's going to see me and whatever. I'm disillusioned, broke young guy with no bitches. Like, I just want to die in the war. just being straight up. But hey, at least now I have actual, something I can work on, actual audience base, and yeah, I mean, this is just the beginning. I'm really looking forward to having y'all join me on this journey. But as I was saying about the specific tweet that I put out, it's just interesting, like the different reactions, and of course, like the people who don't know anything about this subject matter, they're just like showing their ass, like just showing how incredibly racist they are. Like, oh, this is just the homeowners that they didn't take care of their homes, and it's funny because so I reposted it from this guy. His name was Christopher from the UK. And so I contacted him, asked him like where was the source and like where was the address, and so he gave it to me, and I went to the Google Street View. So I went to the houses, and here's the interesting thing: based on the timeline, those houses were still occupied at least until 2013. So what does that mean? That means that those homeowners who were black, like they were just literally on the porch in the lawn. They were owning that home and they were working and they were maintaining the place through the 2008 economic, housing crisis where millions of people got foreclosed and evicted. Like they kept that together until at least 2013, and then like there's like a gap period. So from 2013 to 2018, there's nothing, and then in 2018, it's just like poof, just like falling apart. So I mean. Yeah, and it's just so funny to me how people like honestly were trying to like twist it, saying that it was reversed. And I'm just like, are you serious? Like the concrete is all cracked up and like the weeds are sprouting out. Like all the houses are busted out. Like there's garbage everywhere. There's no like, yeah, no, that's reversed. So, hey man, this is what we're dealing with, okay? Like, yeah. So anyway, so I'm just gonna go ahead and move forward, because that whole tweet, like I was not expecting that. So I mean, it was good to get the exposure. I'm usually the kind of guy that doesn't like attention, but of course, like I just said something pretty controversial, so I signed up for this. Yeah, and honestly, I'm gonna have to because I wanted to get into like video essays and documentaries, and so I'm gonna have to make a whole response video just to this tweet, since that's kind of like my big break. And I can't just do like this little photo just specifically talking about the 2008 crisis. Like I have to talk about like just about the decline of manufacturing in general, and like the attack on black middle class families and home and communities, and because like this goes all the way to like with the World War II boom, and yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of history to unpack just from that single tweet that I made. So it's something that I'm going to have to make. I don't know how long it's going to how long it's going to take. So, if you want me to, actually like get that out there, I suggest supporting me on Patreon. And then, because I mean, again, I have 7,000 followers. So for $1, $7,000, that would help out. I'm just saying, hey. So anyway, so I'm going to move forward, just talking about recent events, especially considering domestic situation, because it really seems like we're reaching a tipping point. Like, wow, this is getting really bad. And primarily, I was gonna focus and open up with the Roe v. Wade scandal, But recent events in New York and Buffalo uh, were pretty bad. There was a terrorist attack. That's what it was, a race terrorist attack, a white supremacist terrorist attack. And this 4chan basement dweller, posted a manifesto on poll, and then he went and live streamed on Twitch. He went to a community that was primarily, black or non-white community, and he live streamed it. He went into a supermarket and just started shooting people just straight out the gate, and yeah, and then now we're here. So this is just a pattern that we're going to keep seeing. This is going to keep getting worse and worse. And again, people are thinking that I'm the one who's being inflammatory, that I'm the one who's the danger because I'm the one who advocates for arms, but I'm not the one running into supermarkets just to murder people. Like, come on, like, dude. And of course, like, this guy, he goes in, starts killing people, and then, when the cops show up, he puts his weapons down and they take him in. And this is the same police force that, like, shoved that elderly man and, like, busted his head open during the George Floyd riots. And they threatened to resign because they were holding them accountable to that. It's just like, this is what we're dealing with, bro. So I'm gonna read from from a local news station, the Buffalo news station, WIVB, and what they're writing about. So, quote: the U.S. Justice Department is investigating Saturday's mass shooting at a Buffalo supermarket as a hate crime and as an act of racially motivated violent extremism. The gunman was identified during his arraignment as Peyton S. Gendron of Conklin, New York, the name that matches the name given in a 180-page manifesto that surfaced online shortly after the attack and took credit for the violence in the name of white supremacy. Law enforcement and government officials would not confirm the validity of the document in the immediate hours after the attack, yet the excruciating detail provided little doubt of its authenticity. A senior federal law enforcement official told the New York Times they believe Gendron posted the document. Quote, there are certain pieces of evidence that we have ascertained in the course of this investigation that indicate some racial animosity. End quote. District Attorney John Flynn said, quote, I'm not going specifically to talk about or elaborate on what exactly they are right now. End quote. The document, which News 4 has reviewed, plotted the attack in grotesque detail. The writer plotted his actions down to the minute, included diagrams of his path through the store, and said he specifically targeted the Tops Market community, or Tops Market location on Jefferson Avenue because of its zip code has the highest percentage of black people close to where he lives. Quote, this is pure evil, Erie County Sheriff John Garcia said, quote, a straight-up racially motivated hate crime. Alexander Rosenberg, Deputy Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League, says the organization is still sifting through the complete document, but it can already draw some conclusions. Quote, greatly anti-Semitic, greatly racist against people of color, white supremacists, radicalized in all ways we can think, end quote. Rosenberg told News 4, quote, 180 pages, I want to repeat, of this, end quote. Gendron livestreamed the attack on the social media platform Twitch and had the N-word written on his rifle. Videos from the scene showed he was charged with first-degree murder after killing 10 people and wounding 3 others. So there is really no ambiguity here. I mean, like, this is what I mean about these alt-right nut jobs, not just the shooters, but the people who are trying to apologize for this or trying to, like, whitewash it, pun intended. And so they're just like, well, we don't really know what his motivations were, or it's still kind of up to interpretation. The guy literally wrote the N-word on the rifle, like he did, and his manifesto directly quotes great replacement theory that people like Fox News love to spout off. This is what I mean, man, and it's just so funny to me that when I say that this country is founded on white supremacy, that people still get shocked by that. Like, how, like, oh, no, you need to read a history book. Bro, I'm studying history, bro. So, like, and, like, the fact that you're still, like, again, when you talk about white supremacy, everybody gets so flustered because they think you're saying white people. I'm not saying white people. It is so easy. Just don't be a racist. Like, it's easy. These fucking nut jobs, they're so obsessed with, like, the drop-by-drop analysis of, like, somebody's DNA makeup, okay? Like, I'm primarily European descent, like, or at least half of myself. So but that still doesn't matter to them because to them I'm still like a mongrel. So like I don't know why I have to like I can't just like say, hey, like I feel threatened because these people are openly attacking us. And like there was another mass shooting, a terrorist attack in El Paso where he targeted primarily Hispanic people, and they took him alive. And I told a friend this, and he was a bit uncomfortable about what I said, but my point was that these idiots, these nut jobs, they think they're heroes, even though what they're doing is like horrific and cowardly. They think they're heroes, and these idiots on these forums, they're just gonna start, yeah, they're gonna start applauding him, like yeah, like this is the this is the Rittenhouse effect. This is I'm sorry, dude. Like I don't know what else to do. I mean, again, because I talk about like getting arms, arming yourself and training and just protecting yourself. That's all I say. But yeah, man, like, what do you think? Like what like, and then like the cops like are just like they're kind of like on the fence, or like at least like they're they don't necessarily advocate for white genocide or white replacement theory, but they're still listening to the same people who are pushing that. So like it's still like just being adjacent is guilt enough. So dude, I'm sorry, man. I don't feel safe here. I live in Texas, bro. I'm in the belly of the beast, man. This is bad. Like I need to get the fuck out of here, bro. If they're doing this, if this fucking idiot is doing this in New York, imagine what could happen in Texas. That's all I have to say. So yeah, man. And then like Tulsa just happened like 100 years ago. Like, dude, we're just about to reach the anniversary of it. Like, bro, I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry, but that's what I have to say about that attack. And we're gonna see. It's gonna get worse. Like this is just this white supremacist terrorism is going to get worse. And of course, the response to that would be, oh, gun control. We have to take away the guns. But of course, they're going to keep funding the police. And yeah, so it's like, take the guns from the civilians, but then we're going to give the budget to the police, who is going to be using those weapons and that force disproportionately against minorities. So, you see? Yeah. I'm sorry, bro. Like, again, because I don't have the options. I'm one who, I don't have the solutions. I'm just somebody who, like, who recognizes the problems. I'm just somebody who, like, advocates for community defense and mutual aid. That's it. That's all. But again, we're gonna have this conversation. It's gonna keep getting deeper and deeper. And again, there's gonna be another mass shooting, and then another one, and then another one. Yeah, and then like, this is just one guy, but like, there's going to be a terrorist attack by these idiots and these nut jobs, where there's going to be multiple gunmen. Like, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So like, dude, this is not. I'm not joking. Like, bro. So anyway, and not just because of this great replacement theory, like it's indicative of a greater trend with this white conservatism, this like fundamentalist evangelical conservatism, because it's not just the replacement theory, but also just like the ownership of the patriarchal system, especially of women, because like there's a lot of links between white supremacy and like the ownership of women and objectification of women. So, and this is directly tied with Roe v. Wade. So, of course, we had that leak of the draft opinion from the Supreme Court. So nothing is definitive just yet. But again, just reading the draft opinion and from Alito, and the way he's writing, is just like, this is again, this is this great replacement, like a virus, ideological virus seeping into our government, into government officials, because you hear certain Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other idiots out there, like they're parroting off these same talking points. And yeah, man, and Alito, like he was talking about the domestic supply of infants. What the hell does that even mean? What is that? This is what I mean, man. These conservatives, they are completely inhuman. They view people as a resource. They do. I mean, he literally just characterized babies as a resource. So, yeah. And then also he directly cited Sir Matthew Hale. Sir Matthew Hale was a juror during the Salem witch trials. Like, he sentenced like women to death for witchcraft. And also, he was Sir Matthew Hale was an advocate for marital rape. So, yeah, that's what Alito was citing. And then also, this political article, they also talk about just the language that Alito uses. So again, I'm just going to read the article real quick. Quote, and this is from Alito. Quote, Roe expressed the feeling that the 14th Amendment was the provision that did the work, but its message seemed to be that the abortion right could be found somewhere in the Constitution and that specifying its exact location was not of paramount importance, end quote. Alito writes, Alito declares that one of the central tenets of Roe, the, quote, viability distinction between fetuses not capable of living outside the womb and of those which can, quote, makes no sense. In several passages, he describes doctors and nurses who terminate pregnancies as, quote, abortionists. When Roberts voted with liberal jurists in 2020 to block a Louisiana law imposing heavier regulations on abortion clinics, his solo concurrence used the more neutral term abortion providers. In contrast, Justice Clarence Thomas used the word, quote, abortionist 25 times in the solo dissent in the same case. Alito's use of the phrase egregiously wrong to describe Roe echoes language Mississippi Solicitor General Scott Stewart used in December in defending his state's ban on abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancies. The phrase was also contained in an opinion Kavanaugh wrote as part of a 2020 ruling that jury convictions in criminal cases must be unanimous. In that option, Kavanaugh labeled two well-known Supreme Court decisions, quote, egregiously wrong when decided, quote, end quote. The 1944 ruling upholding the detention of Japanese Americans during World War II, Korematsu v. Watt, United States, and the 1896 decision that blessed racial segregation under the rubric of, quote, separate but equal, end quote, Plessy versus Ferguson. The High Court has never formally overturned Korematsu, but did repudiate the decision in a 2018 ruling by Roberts that upheld then President Donald Trump's travel ban policy. So, yeah, they're just talking about the language that Alito has used and how that's contrast to other individuals. Because, again, like, it's pretty obvious that he's just trying to impart his ideological views. And he's just trying to, like, he has a conclusion, and then he's trying to like find the route to get there, and that because he literally just made this a states' rights issue. He said that it needs to be up to the elected representatives. It's just like, thanks, dude. Yeah, yeah, and of course when he says abortionist, that type of language is explicitly biased. It's very obvious that he's writing that he's in a negative sense. Like, he's not saying this, like as though he likes these people. Yeah, man, this is a problem. I mean, our courts are getting politicized now, and factionalism is tearing away the fabric of the social order. Yeah, and it was interesting too because these the Republicans are just talking about they're trying to say that oh no, we've changed our times, but Roe v. Wade had passed, right? Yeah, in 1973, 72, with 5 Republican appointee justices. So the fact that they're trying to twist it around, saying that these are changed times when back in the day there were Republican justices who were also on board with this. It just shows how much they're losing this narrative. Yeah, this is not good. I mean, this is the same Supreme Court that overturned the Civil Rights Act, simply because the whole point of it was just oh well, yeah, racism is done, so we don't need this anymore. That was their whole logic. It's just what's gonna happen now, man? I mean, the Republicans have made it very clear that they're gonna. Well, they made it clear they wanted to overturn Roe, and they're gonna get that. And they've also made it very clear that they want to go for contraceptives. And then what happens next? They're going to go for Loving v. Virginia. They're going to go for Brown versus Education. They've made it very clear that they want to remove birthright citizenship. I know I say things and I know that they're scary to hear, but I'm not the one who's doing this. Okay? I have no power. I'm nobody. I'm a fucking shit poster, bro. And you're scared of me when these guys are the ones in control trying to like take us back to like the 1850s? What the hell, dude? Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm sorry, dude. But like, this is what they're doing. This is what their intentions are. They're spouting off this great replacement, white supremacist propaganda. It's stochastic terrorism. And then, like, whenever one of these nut jobs comes out and starts killing people, then they can say, oh, well, he has mental health issues, but they don't want to do anything to fix the mental health crisis that's occurring. You know, they act all concerned about, I'm going to cover the baby formula crisis. They act all concerned about that, but they don't want to do anything to improve material conditions for babies. Yeah, like George Carlin says, like, when you're pre-born, you're fine, but when you're born, you're fucked. Like, exactly. And then also, okay, before, because like the baby formula thing, I like, this is bad. Like, this is gonna get really bad. But I'm gonna talk real quick about the conservative lawmakers, you know, with Roe v. Wade and how that is going to affect birth control. So, yeah. So I'm reading from NBC News. So, with trigger laws in 13 states poised to go into effect if the Supreme Court strikes down Roe v. Wade, a new era of restricted access to birth control could unfold in states that narrowly define when life begins, legal experts say. Quote, "This is the new Jane Crow that we're about to enter," said Michelle Goodwin, a chancellor's professor of law at the University of California, Irvine, and the author of, quote, Policing the Womb, Invisible Women, and the Criminalization of Motherhood. Quote, "It is no longer a hypothetical, the reality is already here," Goodwin said, pointing to states that are considering legislation to limit which kinds of birth control residents can acquire. "It's no longer hypothetical, the reality is already here," end quote, Goodwin said, pointing to states that are considering legislation to limit which kinds of birth controls residents can acquire, like Louisiana and Idaho. Some conservatives wasted no time signaling they were looking into restricting or banning certain types of emergency contraceptives, such as Plan B and other morning-after pills that can be used within 72 hours of intercourse to prevent pregnancy. A leading Republican state legislator in Idaho suggested last week that he would be open to holding hearings on banning emergency birth control, and Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee recently denounced Griswold versus Connecticut, the 1965 case that expanded access to contraceptives to unmarried people. In Louisiana, legislation would classify abortion as a homicide and define personhood as beginning from the moment of fertilization. Contraceptions and methods like Plan B, certain types of intrauterine devices or IUDs, could be restricted under the bill, said Catherine Cohen, a scholar of law and policy at the UCLA Law Center. Quote, "Anything that would prevent a fertilized egg from turning into a pregnancy and being born into a baby could be considered a homicide," end quote, she said. Quote, if you define a pregnancy and you define a person as including just this fetus fertilized egg, then technically you are legislating that an IUD can cause an abortion," end quote. So, yeah, these conservative freaks are coming for us, dude. They are. And this is just purely because, like, they don't want people having sex. Like, that's basically, like, you hear, like, Steven Crowder is just like, well, it's very simple. If you can't afford to have a baby, then don't engage in that activity. It's like, bro, you just don't want people to have sex. You fucking incel. Jesus Christ. I'm a virgin, and, like, this is fucking, like loser shit, dude. What the hell, bro? Like, my God. It's just, like, these people are freaks. I'm sorry. I can't break bread with these people anymore. I really can't. I just... wow, man. Dude, what the fuck, man? Wow. This is insane. Yeah, man. This is just like... Again, you know, they're trying to slide us back, bro. They really are. I don't know what else to tell you. These people need to be stopped. That's all I have to say. Because this is just... I try to look at the best qualities in people, you know, even if I have disagreements or if I think they're, you know, little kooky, you know, I try to see the best qualities in them. There's no redeeming qualities here. None whatsoever. Like, these are just inhuman. I'm sorry. But yeah, so they're coming for women. They're coming for contraceptives because sex is, you know, premarital sex is bad. And, you know, it's crazy. You know, as I was saying, you know, this ties into the great replacement theory. You know, there's some theories that I've read that there's a concern about declining birth rates and such, and so this is just an effort to maintain that birth rate, and make sure that people are forced to have kids because the state needs soldiers, and yeah, it's just crazy to me because like they would rather force like 12-year-olds or like teenagers who got raped by their father, they would rather force those kids to have a baby to maintain the population than to just like have immigration, because that's really like the best way to maintain the population. Like there's a lot of growth in this country to be made. Immigration would help out a lot, but of course, because of demographic changes, oh no, because of the Great Replacement Theory, we can't let these brown people in here, because it'll change the culture. Yeah, that's what it is. So they don't want the immigration to come in to actually make sure our population grows healthily. They want to force rape victims to have their children. Yeah. And then also this is like it's no coincidence either that like Tennessee just passed like a child marriage law. Like, yeah, these people are I'm sorry, bro. Like it's just like I can't with this. But that's the birth control legislative field. That's going to become the next front line, because it seems as though like Roe v. Wade will be overturned. Like, because the decision is left to the Chief Justice, and so yeah, I don't think he's going to rule in favor. I don't know. Yeah, John Roberts will ultimately vote, and he will join an already written opinion to draft his own, but it's unclear. So yeah. Anyway, so I was talking about the birth control and Roe v. Wade, and now I'm going to talk a bit about this baby formula crisis, because it's going to be bad. This winter could really, really be a horrifying situation for some parents, especially low-income working-class parents. So yeah, man, and plus like this lockdown has had a lot of babies. Like a lot of babies have been born. So yeah, man. So I'm reading from The Atlantic. Quote, America's baby formula shortage has gone from curious inconvenience to full-blown national crisis. In many states, including Texas and Tennessee, more than half of formula is sold out in stores. Nationwide, 40% of formula is out of stock, a 20-fold increase since the first half of 2021. As parents have started to stockpile formula, retailers such as Walgreens, CVS, and Target have all moved to limit purchases. The everything shortage isn't new, but rationing essentials for desperate parents, that's a twisted turn in the story of American scarcity. 3 factors are driving the U.S. baby formula shortage: bacteria, a virus, and the trade policy. First, the bacteria. After the recent deaths of at least 2 infants from a rare infection, the FDA investigated Abbott, a major producer of infant formula, and discovered traces of the pathogen Chronobacter sakazaki in a Michigan plant. As a result, the FDA recalled several brands of the formula, and parents were advised not to buy or use some formula tied to the plant. Recalls are common. Thousands of drugs and products are recalled every year, and they don't create a meltdown at pharmacies or require CVS to instate Soviet-style rationing of essentials. So something else is going on here. And it's funny that they talk about Soviet-style rationing when like the Soviet Union would probably be on top of baby formula. Anyway, that brings us to the second case, the virus. The pandemic has snarled all sorts of supply chains, but I can't think of a market it's yanked around more than baby formula. Quote, during the spring of 2020, formula sales rocketed upwards as people stockpiled formula just like they stockpiled toilet paper, end quote. Lyman Stone, the director of research at the consulting firm Demographic Intelligence, told me then as, quote, families worked through their stockpiles. Sales fell a lot. This oscillation made planning for production extremely difficult. It was complicated to get an idea of the actual market size. Meanwhile, Stone's research has found that an uptick in births in early 2020 has corresponded with a, quote, very dramatic decline in rates of breastfeeding among new mothers, which pushed up demand for formula once again. In brief, demand for formula surged as parents hoarded in 2020. Then demand fell, leading suppliers to cut back production in 2021. And now, with more new mothers demanding more formula in 2022, orders are surging faster than supply is recovering. Finally, the third factor, America's regulatory and trade policy. And while that might not sound as interesting to most people as bacteria and viruses, it might be the most important part of the story. FDA regulation of formula is so stringent that most of the stuff that comes out of Europe is illegal to buy here due to technicalities like labeling requirements. Nevertheless, one study found that many European formulas meet the FDA nutritional guidelines, and in some ways might be even better than American formula because the European Union bans certain types of sugars such as corn syrup and requires formulas to have a higher share of lactose. Some parents who don't care about the FDA's imprimatur try to circumvent regulations by ordering formula from Europe through third-party vendors, but U.S. customs agents have been known to seize shipments at the border. So there's a lot to unpack here because there's so many different things that have been like adding up, and like all of a sudden everybody like, how much you want to bet people were like, what, baby formula? Like this is just like one of those things that like it seemed kind of obvious. So like, hey, we should have good stockpiles of baby formula, but of course like everything is based on market demand, so they didn't do that, and now we're here. So yeah, man, this is just how, like, the fact that like there's corn syrup in the baby formula, like they really like corn, man. And they're just like, you're gonna drink this corn, you're gonna like it. Yeah, man, this is just crazy. Yeah, and it gets seized at the customs. The better formula gets seized because of technicalities. But man, there are many times where I'm just like really glad that I don't have kids, that I don't have any baby mama drama. Nobody can say that I'm the one. Like, nobody. So I'm just like, because like I love kids, and like I want to be a father. Like, that's something that I want. I want to have family. But you see stuff like this, and it's just depressing because it's just like I have to like give up basically like, I guess, my dream, because like, that's what I've always wanted, a family. I have to give that up essentially because I live in a fucking apocalypse, and the state doesn't want to actually like address living conditions, and so why am I gonna have children? Sorry. So yeah, man, this is not good. This is not good at all. I feel really bad for the new parents, but yeah, man, it just goes to show that like when these Republicans are coming out about like being pro-life, they don't give a shit about this. They don't care. They're not going to do anything to fix this. They're getting on top of Joe Biden, saying like, oh, look, how could you get to this point? But then like, they don't care. They just don't care at all. And then like Texas, like the ICE agencies and the Customs and Border Patrol, they made a complaint saying how like, I don't see how I have to feed these brown babies in these cages when we have our own children starving. Why do we have to? It's just like they want to starve out those migrants. They want to kill those kids. Like, this is a genocide that's happening with the kids in the cages and such. And they're complaining because they can't go harder. Wow. Like, this is why I need to get the fuck out of Texas, bro. I'm sorry. I was dragged here. And I keep hearing my family like, oh, but you have to stay. Nah, bro. Y'all don't want to leave. And this place keeps getting worse. So I'm leaving. Bye. Once I get my degree, I'm out. Wow. So, yeah. Yeah, man. So there's a lot that's happening here. And this winter is going to get really bad, especially for, people who are, just having the newborn infants. Yeah, man. Dude, man, like... Wow. And that doesn't even like cover like malnutrition in school children and working class communities. Like, I was because I work at this call center now, and we call for like progressive causes, and so all over the country. So our group has been calling Houston, and we've been calling about HISD schools and trying to get them to remove the lead. Like up to 84% of the schools have lead and other chemicals in the water, and the kids are drinking that, so that's going to affect their development and their behavior. And like, I keep calling with these people, and listen, I don't want it to sound like I'm being misanthropic, but like a lot of these people are just like, they don't have a good education, they're just like, huh? What you mean? I don't got any kids. It's just like, okay, but like the kids are drinking lead. I don't give a fuck. I'm just like, okay, you know what? You were probably drinking that same water too, so it kind of makes sense. But it's just like, yeah, man, dude, this is just a terrible place to live. I'm sorry, but yeah, man, fuck them kids. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to talk about there, and it's kind of crazy that like this whole like baby formula, this whole Roe v. Wade, and then also this like terrorist attack that just happened is all tied with this white supremacist conspiracy theory of white genocide. Oh, the white people are being replaced. We're gonna be gone. It's like okay, and like who cares? Like, all right, like that race mixing that happens. Like whenever you have a diverse population over time, they're gonna turn to something new. That's okay. But because you guys are nut jobs and race realists, like you guys are thinking America's falling apart because there's no more white people. Like, what the hell are you talking about, bro? Jesus Christ! Like not too long ago, Italians and Irish weren't seen as white. Now they're white. So like, white is not even a real thing. They just made that up because well, we gotta protect our women and like that's all it is, dude. Like it's just crazy, bro. So that's why I wanted to touch up there. And also, before I wrap up this domestic segment, I'm going to also cover some anti-trans legislations that have been popping up over the country. Because this is bad. Like, this is the type of stuff that, like, sees, like a fascist takeover. Like, this is how it starts, dude. They attack the most, like, powerless, vulnerable portions of our society, and then they move on to the next one, and then the next one, right? First they came for the unionists, first they came for the gays, and nobody stood up for me. So I'm gonna read from freedomforallamericans.org, and this is their legislative tracker for anti-transgender legislation, and yeah, man, I need to touch up on this more because like the LGBT subject matters, like I haven't really been covering that as much. I mean, I have like touched on it, but like this needs to be more central because, for starters, I just need to be a better ally. But also, like, this is where the fascism starts. This is where the genocide starts, right? They try to say it's about the children. Oh, we have to protect the children. They're grooming our kids. That it's grooming to tell your children, hey, like, I'm a gay person. This is my husband. We love each other. Hey, if you feel the same way, it's okay. Like, that's grooming. So, yeah, man, this is bad. Anyway, so reading from Freedom for All Americans, during the 2020 legislative session, dozens of states will consider legislation related to the LGBTQ discrimination. Some bills will seek to advance the comprehensive non-discrimination laws that LGBTQ people so sorely need, while others will almost certainly attempt to single out and target LGBTQ people for unfair and unequal treatment. Freedom for All Americans is tracking each relevant bill in our 2022 legislative tracker in partnership with Equality Federation. So, yeah, they have like a whole like list of states that have passed different anti-trans laws. And the worst states are Iowa, Tennessee, and Arizona. In Tennessee specifically, they have it pretty bad. Like some of y'all probably seen on Twitch or Twitch and Twitter, there was this streamer, I believe her name was Win, and she had like a raid, and the cops took her away because she's like a 16-year-old girl, trying to be her full self. Yeah, man, like this is crazy, bro. But then you see like Nazi kids and KKK kids, nothing ever happens to them because it's part of the plan. Quite frankly, it's what it is. So I'm gonna read some of the bills from Tennessee. So HB 0474, an act to amend Tennessee Code and annotated Title 39 relative to sexual offenses. The bill summary. As introduced, broadens the offense of indecent exposure when committed to masturbation or exposure to include victims who are 14 years old or younger. Okay, so this is just like some weird anti-masturbation law. I don't know how that's tied with trans people. Let's see another one. HB 1177, as introduced, specifies for the offense of observation without consent that a person has reasonable expectation of privacy from members of the opposite sex in a single-sex, multi-person use bathroom, locker room, dressing room, yada yada. So this is basically like school lockers, Yeah, these freaks. They also advocate for genital examination. Oh no, because we have to look at your genitals. Yes, I have to look at your penis. Jesus. HB 2316, as introduced, prohibits males from participating in public higher education sports that are designed for females, creates a cause of action for violations that deprive a student of an athletic opportunity and that cause direct or indirect harm to a student at a middle school, high school, or post-secondary level. So that's limiting trans girls from playing with other girls. SB 2153, as introduced, prohibits males from participating. Okay, so that's kind of the same thing. So yeah, so that's basically where it's going at, and it's mainly targeting school children who may be transgender, or that's basically what it's targeting at. They are doing that one, the Don't Say Gay bill, firing teachers for educating about gender identity and sexual identity. So yeah, man, this is how it starts. This is a real dial back, and they're really starting to make it worse and worse. I don't know what they think is going to happen if they keep pushing this far. And Texas is certainly going to start going down this rabbit hole. And I think Texas will get worse. It's probably going to be the worst. Because the thing with these red conservative states, they have to go harder. So that way they can go to their voter base and say, you see, I'm the one who's taking the fight. So that it's all political. It's all political because their voter base are crazy. Primarily because the elites have slashed all kinds of education, and they want to keep their voter base uneducated. They want to keep them as ignorant, quite frankly racist, and it's just So that's what I wanted to touch up on, and this is certainly something that's going to keep getting worse. But I always say this. I say this to women, and I'm certainly going to extend this onto the LGBTQ community. And of course, this is something that they're already on top of, but I'm going to parrot it. Arm yourself. That's all I have to say. Just arm yourself, train, and start networking. So that's all I'm going to say there. But yeah, man, this is bad. This is just getting worse and worse, dude. So yeah, that's America. We're sliding back, and yeah, man, these conservatives are asking for trouble. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about the domestic situation, domestic sphere. Things are certainly going to evolve and transpire. Yeah, man, this summer is going to be very interesting. And we're about to reach the anniversary of George Floyd's death. So who knows what's going to happen moving forward. So anyway, the domestic segment. And now I want to touch up on the international sphere, just recent events that have been transpiring, and how we're going to open up with the Ukraine conflict. But first off, before I touch up on just recent developments, I wanted to touch up on some rumors. That's all it is, rumors. That I just read I read this morning in my bed, and I jumped out of bed just okay, I gotta record now. So it's being rumored that currently there is a coup in Russia underway against Vladimir Putin. Now, of course, this is coming from Ukrainian intelligence, so it's certainly biased. But, considering the situation on the ground in Russia, it's not good for them. Even though they are, taking the fight, the situation isn't good. And also, there's just been rumors about Vladimir Putin's health. It's alleged that he has blood cancer. And, I mean, just from looking at Putin, he's not looking good. He looks a bit puffy in the face, and there's been videos of him shaking a bit. I mean, this is the thing that we're going to start seeing now with these world leaders, because they're dinosaurs and they don't want to relinquish power. They're going to stay in power until they croak. and they're going to take the whole world with them because they are just, deranged. I don't know what to tell you. Like, dude, if I'm like 70 something years old and I'm still in charge of a country, I'm going to be like upset. I would be upset at the younger generations. Like, hey man, like, well, first off, I would have retired a long time ago. But if people kept saying, no, you got to keep going, like, no, we need new blood. Like, any wise ruler would understand that. But of course, it's not about, ruling with, good intentions and actually like providing the best environment, the best conditions for your people. It's all about, your little mob, your little mafia, right? So anyway, so I'm going to read from Newsweek. And again, these are just rumors, so we don't know what's going to happen. Chances are by the time I actually upload this, like something major would happen. So, yeah. So, quote, a top Ukrainian official has said that a coup to overthrow Russian President Vladimir Putin is underway and cannot be stopped. Major General Kirill Budanov told British broadcaster Sky News that if Russia lost the war in Ukraine, Putin would be removed and his country would collapse. Now, of course, there are citing Sky News, so that is not the most reliable source. But again, this is just what we're reading for now. Quote, it will eventually lead to the change of leadership of the Russian Federation, Budanov told the outlet. This process has already been launched. When pressed on whether he believed a coup was already in train, he responded yes, adding that, quote, they are moving in this way and it is impossible to stop it, end quote. In an interview that Sky broadcast, Budanov did not offer any evidence for a coup, while there has been speculation as to whether the poor performance of Russian forces in Ukraine could precipitate Putin's removal. Experts have cast doubt on whether this is possible. Russia's Federal Protective Services, FSO, the main spy agency, the FSB, and the National Guard serve to protect Putin. However, speculation is growing about Putin's health, with a number of reports of the last few weeks suggesting that he could be seriously ill, potentially weakening his grip on power. In the Sky News interview, Budanov bolstered these rumors, the latest of which include an unnamed oligarch telling a magazine that Putin was very ill with blood cancer. Quote, we can confirm that Putin is in very bad psychological and physical condition, and he is very sick, Budanov said. Quote, he is very sick. He has various illnesses at the same time, one of which is cancer. The Kremlin, which Newsweek has contacted for comment, has repeatedly said that Putin is in good health. However, the Russian leader's public appearances in which he has looked shaky, as well as his absence from a hockey match this week that he usually partakes in, has added to the mystery over his condition. Budanov also said in the interview that he expected the war in Ukraine to end by the end of the year. With victory for Kyiv's forces, he predicted that the breaking point in the conflict will take place in August. So, it's all speculation for the moment. Like, we just have to see how things unfold. I'm just getting this out now because that's like when somebody's saying there's a coup in Russia, that's a pretty serious situation. And considering how things are evolving, like, it seems a bit, it seems plausible. That's all I'm saying. Because I don't think I don't think these oligarchs, I don't think they like the direction things are going. Because let's be honest, right? Because, it looks as though Russia is going to be completely isolated from the West. But those oligarchs want to do business in the West. They can do business with China all day, but they want to be in the West. They want to be in Europe. They want to be in Monaco and of course in Sardinia and all, like, with their yachts and stuff. They want to be there. So yeah. So who knows, man. So anyway, that's just speculation for the moment about the situation, and we're just gonna have to see what happens. So I'm gonna also start reading about just really about this offensive now that's occurring, because this is like the second phase. So, and I'm reading from the Institute for the Study of War. So they pulled back from Kyiv, like that whole offensive, that attempt to encircle the city, that's just done for. They've also pulled out, from Kharkiv, or they're trying to make moves there, but they're totally just realigning their whole strategy now, and they're focusing on the Donbas area, the Donbas region, and so they're pushing heavy there. I saw a video, and I posted on Twitter, and it's legit trench warfare, and they're just in the trench line, and there's artillery shells dropping in. It's apocalyptic, man. Like, wow, this is really apocalyptic. So, yeah, those Ukrainians are fighting hard, and they're in it, dude. It's World War III over there for them. So, yeah. So just reading from the Institute from the Study of War, they have their assessment about this new offensive. And even now, still in this stage, Russia is blundering, and they're blundering pretty badly. So, just reading just from their key takeaways, they quote that the Ukrainian destruction of significant elements of a Russian motorized rifle brigade that tried to cross a pontoon bridge over the Donets River on May 11 has shocked prominent Russian mill bloggers. Those bloggers have begun commenting on the incompetence of Russian military to their hundreds of thousands of followers. The attempted river crossing showed a stunning lack of tactical sense, as satellite images showed destroyed Russian vehicles tightly bunched up at both ends of the destroyed bridge, clearly allowing Ukrainian artillerymen to kill hundreds and destroy scores of vehicles with concentrated strikes. Yeah, and like the images from that river crossing is just like, wow, it's a pure blunder. Like, dude, like they're not learning. They're not. Yeah, it's just like that one Ukrainian soldier. He's just saying like, we are very lucky that they're fucking idiots. Wow. And again, I can't necessarily blame the conscripts and the guys that were just pushed out there. It's the command. It's the officers. They have they don't know what they're doing. It's just completely lost. I mean, it makes sense because the Russian military, I guess now at this point, it's just more about like favoritisms, and it's just an extension of the mafia at this point. Like, it's just crazy to see what's happening. But yeah, man, they're just completely like shooting themselves in the foot. And as they were saying, like these Russian stands, these mill bloggers, now they're saying like, okay, something's up, because it's pretty obvious now that like the Russians are not performing up to standard. Yeah. What else? Russian forces continued operations to set conditions for the Battle of Severodonetsk from the south, however, advancing on the town of Zolot, roughly 30 kilometers south of Severodonetsk. Russian troops likely seek to secure the highway north of Zolot to Severodonetsk for their advance, but they may also seek to cut the last highway linking Severodonetsk with the rest of Ukraine via Bakhmut. They could try to strike northwest across the country from their current positions to cut the highway closer to Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. The Russians are extremely unlikely to be able to take Bakhmut, but they may be able to cut or render unusable the highway from Bakhmut to Severodonetsk if they can advance far enough along either of those possible routes. So, it's just this whole Eastern Front now is just turning into a meat grinder. It's just interesting to me that the Russians have still not made any moves to Zaporizhzhia. In fact, like, just from this map that I'm looking at, the Ukrainian forces are making small gains. So they're making small counteroffensives, trying to take back Kherson, and in Kharkiv as well. They've made small gains. So they've effectively pushed Russians out of artillery range. And yeah, there's just like heavy fighting around Luhansk in the Donetsk area, and that's where the Russians are making their efforts. But I've seen like diagrams that show that like because they're trying to encircle certain positions, and the encirclement just like keeps getting smaller, like the flanking moves. So like they can't get through. Like they're really like getting like pummeled, the Russians. So yeah, because they're assaulting heavily fortified trench lines and positions that have been there since 2014, since for 8 years. So it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a grinder. I was talking in my earlier episode that the Ukrainians over there need to withdraw to prevent an encirclement, but it does seem like they're putting up a stable fight. So just doing what they can. And again, with this war, it's like I want the Ukrainians to resist. I support the resistance, but of course, the more that I've been looking into this conflict and what this Ukrainian government's about, there are a lot of ties to far-right extremists and neo-Nazis. I thought it was initially just like a fringe group, a fringe militia, but no, there's deep ties. The ties are at a certain point is no longer a coincidence. So, on the one hand, I want the Ukrainians to resist and I want them to stand up against this Russian invasion. That does not mean that I support the government. That does not mean that I'm going to be blind to whatever, corruptions or scandals that occur with this administration. Because, yeah, man, just, I guess the honeymoon phase is kind of done, and the reality starts setting in. Like, okay, this is, now I look at geopolitics and I just see bad guys versus bad guys. That's all I see. I can't see any state power where I'm like, you know what? They're doing the right thing, So yeah, so they're having their offensive in Luhansk and Donetsk, and then also there's Mariupol, which is effectively like in Russian hands. It's under Russian control, but there's the steel factory, the Azovstal steel factory, where the remaining Azov forces are fighting. And yeah, man, it's apocalyptic for them. It really is. This is like, it's like worse than Escape from Tarkov. It really is. Like, this is bad. This is like Metro and Escape from Tarkov. Yeah, man, it looks bad. I mean, like, those guys, I mean, they're amputated and it's all dirty. And yeah, man, it's bad. Dude. Like, I mean, after a certain point, like, you kind of have to give up. But then again, like, I think those soldiers know that they're all going to die. So they're just going to fight. And yeah. Again, it's like, because I don't want to applaud them because these are the Azov guys. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to be taken prisoner either. And of course, I'm not a Nazi. But it's just like, I would not want to be taken prisoner by Russians. I would not. So yeah, it's a really bad situation for them out there, and we just have to keep following this, really. But it's just interesting to me how, like, Russia, they're basically just moving the goalposts. And then they also had this victory parade, so like that was basically just whipping up propaganda and national fervor. Yeah, man, that was just weird. But I mean, the victory parade is more tied to the victory over, for the Great Patriotic War, which, okay, great. Like, I get that. That's, you guys were fighting an existential conflict, so it makes sense that you want to honor that sacrifice. I get it. But, of course, given current circumstances, they're tying it up with the Ukraine conflict, as though Ukraine is going to wipe out Russia. It was funny, too, even like, Putin, he laid down a wreath at a casket that had Kyiv written on it. It's so silly. Anyway, that's what I can draw on for now, because I haven't really been keeping too much on top of this, with this whole new phase. But yeah, that's just basically what's occurring with that. So that's the war, and we just have to see how things move from there. But I also wanted to touch upon other developments that don't include war. So I wanted to touch up on just other developments that have occurred, specifically with France. So they had their presidential election, and Emmanuel Macron, he is moving forward as president again, beating Le Pen. And yeah, that's good to see. I'm not, of course, not the biggest fan of Macron, but I'll take that versus Le Pen. She kind of flirts with Nazism, and yeah, she's like the French Margaret Thatcher. That's the way I can think of it. So yeah, so they won, or Macron, he won, but there have also been leftist movements and leftist candidates who also got a pretty significant voter base, and they have recently moved forward with a deal that the leftist parties, so it would be the Greens, the Communists, other left-wing, center-left wing groups. They formed a coalition faction for the parliament, and which allows them to have at least 62% of the council's seats. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I'm reading from France 24. So quote, the National Council of the French Socialist Party ratified a coalition deal with 3 other left-wing parties early Friday to run as a unified front in June's parliamentary elections. A large majority, 62% of the council members voted in favor, but only after hours of sometimes tense debates. The debate over the proposal lasted 4 hours, with some major party figures condemning the alliance with the hard left La France Insoumise, France Unbowed, the Greens, and the Communist Party for the parliamentary elections on June 12th and June 19th. In the end, 167 members voted in favor and 101 against, and with 24 abstentions. This is a clarifying vote, said Party Chief Olivier Faure, adding that it shows that the Socialist Party belongs on the left and not on the side of President Emmanuel Macron. Other key party figures, including Lily Mayer, Martine Aubry, also backed the deal despite, quote, reservations over Europe, end quote, specifically a proposal to disobey provisions of some European Union treaties. So yeah, they're just trying to form a government here, a coalition. And I said that would be 62% of the councils, but that was talking about the left-wing parties. Actual parliamentary seats, according to the list from the AFP, would give the Socialist Party 70 of France's 577 parliamentary seats. So, yeah, it would that would be a pretty significant step. But yeah, and let's see what here. Former French President François Hollande and his former Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve were among those voicing the strongest oppositions, with Cazeneuve going as far as quitting the party rather than joining forces with France's unbowed Jean-Luc Mélenchon, a former socialist himself turned fierce antagonist of the party. Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo, the socialist candidate in this year's presidential election, said that she did not want to get in the way of a deal that could help combat, quote, environmental and social aggression, while nevertheless criticizing a program that she said, quote, does not include the necessary guarantees on NATO, Europe, or defending secularism, end quote. So yeah, man, it's nice to see that there's some movement from the left, from a pretty significant power, France. Let's just hope, they can pull through and actually, make an effect. It's just interesting how, I'm looking at the French election and it's just like, oh, how does their system work? Well, whoever wins the most votes wins. Not like electoral colleges over here. But yeah, I would like to visit, I could just be in there and just be like, oh, je suis communiste. Just, yeah, man. Yeah, this is interesting developments. It's good for them. That's I guess the one source of good news you can think of for the left, that they're making some movements there, because we certainly need to do that here. Although I really don't think our electoral system will allow for true left-wing opposition. So this is why I'm kind of leaning towards unions forming their own national assembly. That's really what we should be doing. We should form our own national assembly. But of course, me saying that is a bit controversial. But I'm nobody, so not like anybody's going to follow my word. But yeah, I mean, just looking at history and looking at other revolutions that have occurred, like the left and the workers have to form our own convention, our own assembly. But of course, that's something that we can talk about, but we actually have to do it. So anyway, that's just what I have to say there. But that's France, and we'll have to keep a close eye on their election and just how things unfold. Also, other places in the world, such as Sri Lanka, have been experiencing certain developments. Recently, there's been riots and protests in Sri Lanka against the government. They're currently in a pretty significant economic crisis, and just mainly due to mismanagement and corruption from this. It's like a political family, the Rajapaksa. So I'm going to read from BBC just about what's been happening. Quote, there have been violent scenes in Sri Lanka with mobs targeting the homes of prominent political figures, including the ruling Rajapaksa family. The Prime Minister, Mahinda Rajapaksa, has resigned over the government's handling of the island nation's worst economic crisis since gaining independence from Britain in 1948. However, his brother is refusing to step down as president. Why have people taken to the streets? Protests over rising prices and shortages flared up in early April in the capital, Colombo, and have grown in size and spread across the country. People are furious because the cost of living has become unaffordable. And then they have this graph of consumer prices of wheat, flour, and rice. And yeah, it's like it's mainly stable from 2020 all the way to like September 2021, and then it just starts jumping up. Yeah, man. So I went from 100 rupees per kilogram in September 2021. In March 2022, it's surpassed 150. So I'd say it's probably like 170 or so. And probably already when people were eating at 100 rupees, even then they were probably still deprived. So like it just seems to get worse. So yeah, food prices started rising in late 2021, and people are now paying up to 30% more for food than a year ago. This has forced many people to skip meals. There have also been fuel shortages and power cuts, and lack of medicines has brought the health system to the verge of collapse. And then they talk about this Rajapaksa family and who they are, and yeah, they've had a stronghold with this political system. So protesters attempted to storm the prime minister's official residence while Mahinda Rajapaksa was inside, and have attacked Rajapaksa's family homes elsewhere in Sri Lanka. The family has played a prominent role in Sri Lankan politics for years, occupying top positions in various administrations. Mahinda Rajapaksa was president during the country's long-running civil war, which ended with the defeat of the Tamil Tigers in 2009. His younger brother, Gotabaya, who served as defense minister at the time, is now Sri Lanka's president. Gotabaya has said that he has no intentions of quitting as president, and last week declared a state of emergency. And then they also go on to talk about this economic crisis and what the cause of it is, and it's just mainly like mismanagement. Yeah. Why is there an economic crisis? Sri Lanka's problems come down to the fact that its foreign currency reserves have virtually run dry. The country is heavily reliant on imports, but can no longer afford to pay for staple foods and fuel. The government blames the COVID pandemic, which all but killed off Sri Lanka's tourist trade, one of the biggest foreign currency earners. It also says tourists were frightened off by a series of deadly bomb attacks on churches 3 years ago. However, many experts say economic mismanagement is to blame. At the end of its civil war in 2009, Sri Lanka chose to focus more on its domestic markets instead of selling to foreign ones, so income from exports remained low, while the bill for imports kept growing. Nowadays, Sri Lanka imports $3 billion more than it exports every year. The government also racked up huge debts with countries including China to fund what critics called unnecessary infrastructure projects. At the end of 2019, Sri Lanka had $7 billion in foreign currency reserves. However, by March 2020, its reserves had dwindled down to $1.93 billion. Finance Minister Ali Sabri, and that's in US dollars. Finance Minister Ali Sabri recently said that the bulk of these reserves were not usable, leaving just $50 million at the country's disposal. Wow. And they also talk about just like tax cuts that have been made. They also talk about they stopped like the import of fertilizer and to switch to organic fertilizer, and this led to crop failures, and that's going to make the supply, worse and such. And yeah, man, yeah, it's just mismanagement, corruption, and of course now we're seeing it. And of course the people in Sri Lanka, they have been explicitly making this like workers' revolution. Like they were walking out with portraits of Marx and such. So yeah, man, that's a pretty interesting situation that's happening. And Sri Lanka has always been a bit of a hot zone, especially with those Tamils. So yeah, this is just another development for them. So anyway, so that's what I wanted to touch up on. And before I finish up this international segment, I also wanted to speak on just recent developments in the Middle East concerning Israel and Palestine. Again, Israel keeps acting up and showing the world what they're about, and people keep looking the other way. I think now, like, it's getting to the point where, like, people know that Israel is, like, kind of out of control, but it's just like, well, we're working with them because, those Arabs. It's like, yeah, it's just, you see that the rationality that people have about certain things, and They like to pretend as though they're about fairness and treatment of others, but like at the end of the day, it's all about the power and the politics. And yeah, well, my side has to win, so I don't really have to have any convictions or morals. So I mean, what happened with Israel this time? Because there's always something happening. The IDF forces in Jenin, they were raiding a refugee camp in Jenin, killed a Palestinian American journalist for Aljazeera. They killed Shireen Abu Akleh, and so yeah, man, this is just another development that's happened. And Shireen was somebody who was pretty heavy on Israel's war crimes and their actions. So I wholeheartedly do believe that they targeted her. And I mean, let's be honest though, because you see the footages of her before her death. She's clearly wearing a blue vest and a blue helmet with press marked on it, clear as day. And then also, just from the autopsy that's come out, she was shot below her ear, and snipers know that is like the perfect place to shoot somebody. That doesn't just happen from a stray bullet. You're gonna tell like literally like right below her ear, and that's always the place that snipers shoot, especially when somebody's wearing a helmet. So yeah, this was deliberate. This was an assassination, full stop. And then now they're trying to find ways to, well, you see, because there was a clash, and so like before it was like, oh no, it was the Palestinian fighters, and then like, oh no, in the clash, in the heat of the moment, we accidentally like the IDF, they're gangsters and criminals. That's what they are. That's full stop is what they are. So reading from Al Jazeera, and I'm reading about just her colleagues who were there with her and their testimony. They say that there was no confrontation or clash. They say that the IDF started shooting when they saw them. So just reading from Al Jazeera, right? Al-Samaudi and other journalists at the scene said there were no Palestinian fighters present when the journalists were shot, directly disputing an Israeli statement referencing the possibility that it was Palestinian fighters. We were, quote, we were going to film the Israeli army operation, and suddenly they shot us without asking us to leave or stop filming, said Al-Samaudi. Quote, the first bullet hit me, and the second bullet hit Shireen. There was no Palestinian military resistance at all at the scene, end quote. Shatha Hanesha, a local journalist who was standing next to Abu Akleh when she was shot, also told Al Jazeera that there had been no confrontation between Palestinian fighters and the Israeli army. She said the group of journalists had been directly targeted. Quote, we were 4 journalists who were all wearing vests, all wearing helmets, Hanesha said. Quote, the Israeli occupation army did not stop firing even after she collapsed. I couldn't even extend my arm to pull her because of the shots being fired. The army was adamant on shooting to kill. The details of Abu Akleh's killing are still emerging, but video of the incident showed that she was shot in the head, said Al Jazeera's Nida Ibrahim. Quote, what we know for now is that the Palestinian Health Ministry has announced her death. Shireen Abu Akleh was covering the events unfolding in Jenin, specifically an Israeli raid on the city, which is north of the occupied West Bank, when she was hit by a bullet in the head, Ibrahim said, speaking from the Palestinian city of Ramallah. So, yeah, they shot her. They shot her dead. And then they shot the people trying to pick her up. And, like, the journalists that were on the scene said they started shooting immediately. Okay? Yeah, this is so-called the most professional military on the planet, but these guys, they shoot journalists on site. Like, how can you say, oh, well, it's the heat of the moment and they didn't see it? These journalists, they wear specifically blue vests so they can stand out, and they still got shot. So, yeah, man, and of course America doesn't do anything about it. I mean, like, this wasn't on the front page of CNN, right? This is not something they're going to cover extensively. I mean, right now, rightfully, they're going to be heavy on this terrorist attack in Buffalo, but again, they never touched on this subject matter. They never showed those images of the Israeli soldiers beating down the pallbearers at her funeral. Like, like, regardless of what I'm saying and what my views are, like, just watch the video, man. Like, and then you see this, and you still have to rationalize well, you see, because these Palestinians, they're rowdy, and these cops are on edge, and dude, like the just wow, man, it's straight up delusional. Like there's the type of comments and the type of rationality you see online, just like the video is right there. Okay, there's video of her getting shot. There's video of the sniper shooting the people trying to take her back. Okay, plus like whatever, like this clash that we talk about in the West Bank, like most of those Palestinians are unarmed. Okay, so whatever clashes occur is always the settlers with their IDF thugs bodyguarding them, walking up to a Palestinian village or some kind of, these people minding their business, pushing them around, spitting at them, throwing rocks, and then whenever the Palestinians are like, hey, fuck off, the soldiers come in, either shoot them or just like tear gas them, or, like just beat them up. But of course, these are the good guys. These are oh no, because Israel is the victim. And of course, if you criticize Israel, that's an attack against all of Judaism. Meanwhile, there are Jews who go to Israel pointing out how fucked up it is, how weird, like you can hear all types of comments from Jews who have done that, what's it called? The birthright trip, right? When they have to go, and it's always like some weird like matchmaking, like, well, you see, because we have to procreate and we have to maintain, you see, it's like, it's so weird, man. Like, it's wow, man. Yeah. But anyway, so that's from Al Jazeera, and then I'm also going to read Time magazine, because they're talking about just Israel's response to this and the way that they tried to cover this up, because like this is what they always do whenever one of their soldiers gets a little trigger happy. They have like this emergency conference, and they have to like form like they have to get their story straight, right? So reading from Time magazine, right? When word got out Wednesday that esteemed Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was killed in the West Bank city of Jenin, where Israeli forces had been making military arrest raids, Israel convened its national PR staff to form a plan of action. It decided to circulate a video of a Palestinian gunman shooting indiscriminately from inside the Jenin refugee camp and blame them for the Al Jazeera reporter's death. But its strategy fell flat when another video revealed that Abu Akleh died nowhere near there. Abu Akleh was a 51-year-old Catholic Palestinian who switched to journalism after studying to be an architect and became one of the Arab world's most prominent TV journalists. Most nights for 25 years, her face lit up millions of TV screens as she shared the stories of Palestinian people living under Israeli military occupation. Arab girls and women looked up to her, and foreign journalists who reported from the Palestinian territories held her in high regard. Now Al Jazeera has accused Israel of, quote, assassinating her in cold blood, end quote. And Arab journalists from Washington to Tunisia to Syria are staging sit-ins. Qatar lit up a building with her image. Cartoons are circulating of Abu Akleh holding a bleeding microphone with an M16 pointing at it, the type of rifle used by Israeli soldiers. A few Arab parents have named their newborn daughter Shireen Abu Akleh, has become a Palestinian symbol. To Israel, her death risks damage to essential relationships in the Arab world, while Abu Akleh's U.S. citizenship brings relations with Washington into the equation, raising both the stakes and the level of scrutiny. The State Department declared, quote, the investigation must be immediate and thorough, and those responsible must be held accountable. Deny and deflect is Israel's usual strategy for dealing with high-profile civilian deaths. The deflection has come in three forms. One, claiming Palestinians killed the civilian. Often, Israel claims that the victim was near a site from which Palestinian gunmen were attacking Israelis and hence got killed by accidental Israeli gunfire. Israel has also claimed that the civilian was involved in an attack on Israeli soldiers or was a member of the Palestinian militant organization. In other cases, Israel said that the facts around the killing are unclear, but definitely not Israel's fault. In the case of the 2003 death of American pro-Palestinian activist Rachel Corrie, who was run over by a military bulldozer, the Israeli army claimed a slab of concrete was likely what killed her. When Israeli missiles brought down an 11-story media building last year in Gaza, where Palestinian media networks and the Associated Press were located, Israel justified it by saying it was being used by Hamas. Back in 2006, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert initially apologized for the killings of 7 members of the Galia family in Gaza by Israeli artillery. Quote, but the military swiftly realized it was confronting another PR disaster to rival that of the killing of Mohammed al-Dura, end quote, wrote Guardian journalist Chris McGrail, referencing the wrenching footage of the Gaza boy killed cowering beside his father during a 2000 firefight. Quote, the army quickly convened the committee to investigate the deaths on the beach and almost as swiftly absolved itself of any responsibility, end quote. Within a half hour of Abu Akleh's killing, the Israeli state PR machine went to work on a deflection strategy. Israeli journalist Barak Ravid revealed in a Hebrew report on Walla website that, quote, there was an urgent consultation of the National Hasbara headquarters together with representatives of the Prime Minister's office, the Foreign Ministry, and the Israeli Defense Forces. They decided that the main goal was to try and fend off the narrative that was emerging in the international media, according to which Abu Akleh was killed by Israeli fire, end quote. So Israel used a short video that was filmed that morning by Palestinian militants in the residential area in which the men were heard saying that they had shot a soldier. Bennett posted the video and claimed that since no Israeli soldier was injured in Jenin that day, the footage was evidence that the militants had mistaken Abu Akleh in her helmet and body armor for a combatant. And yeah, it just keeps going further and further. But they're just trying to twist it around. They just, yeah, man. This is, again, they're thugs, they're gangsters, they're, I thought, because they recently booted Netanyahu, so I was thinking, okay, well, they got a new guy in, Bennett, right? So maybe they'll make some changes. Nope, it's the same shit. It's just to meet the new boss, same as the old boss. That's what it is. Yeah, man. Israel is a bastard, man. That's all that has to be said. And yeah, I'm gonna be harder on it, And of course, and they even pointed out she was a Catholic Palestinian. So she wasn't even a Muslim, but of course, to these alt-right idiots, they don't care about that. They love this shit. They love seeing, yeah. Like, I remember I made a statement on a history subreddit saying that the occupation of the West Bank is reminiscent to Lebensraum and Manifest Destiny, and in fact that Lebensraum was directly influenced by Manifest Destiny as the Germans were colonizing Africa. And then, of course, they called me revisionist and pushing an agenda. And some guy's like, oh, well, you see, because, Lebensraum, that took over the course of a couple of years, and that was, heavily mechanized and automated. And Manifest Destiny took over, over at least a century or so. It's not exactly the same thing. Meanwhile, like, if you read, accounts of Manifest Destiny and the settlement of the West, it was noted for being extremely industrious, for being practically a steamroller. Of course, to some alt-right idiot, some hoi 4 tank enthusiast who who always likes to cosplay and roleplay Nazi Germany. Oh, we just got to get the fuel and then we can win, right? Of course, to you, right? Manifest Destiny it's not the same thing, but of course, to the natives who were living there, who were being massacred and displaced, they just got steamrolled. So again, of course, they don't really care about that. They don't actually want to make that historical analysis, and that's not, Manifest Destiny isn't the only thing that has influenced Nazi Germany. Okay, and a lot of eugenics and all that, Jim Crow segregation laws like that, they also directly influenced Nazi Germany. And they are also directly influencing Israel in this apartheid system. So anyway, don't want to get too hung up on that. But, this is only going to get worse. And Israel just keeps acting up, man. I don't know what do you think is going to happen, man? Like, the U.S. isn't going to be here forever. What do you think is going to happen to you guys when you keep acting like this? Bro. Oh, man. Yeah, so that's all I have to say on that. And we just gotta, we really gotta make sure that people understand the sacrifice that she made, because I didn't know who she was until they killed her. And there's like that Obi-Wan quote: "If you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could ever imagine." I always make movie references in here, but They turned her into a martyr, okay, because of the work that she did. If they hadn't had killed her, she would have just been a normal. It would have been like, because I mean, I didn't know who she was until she got killed. So like, she would have just been doing her work, and that would have been that. I mean, most people weren't really following this to begin with, but now that she got killed and now that people are sharing this, I mean, I shared a video of the soldiers attacking the funeral procession, and then I had other friends of mine who aren't usually politically like active, and especially when it comes to something like Israel, also making comments about this. So the public opinion is changing. It really is. So we just got to keep pushing on it. So that's the international field that I'm discussing, and then to finish up the program, I'll talk on the natural world, environmental issues, mainly just the UN report that recently came out. The IPCC always comes out with a report, and every time it says red alert, we are heading towards an apocalypse. So again, people want to say that I'm peddling conspiracy theories. Meanwhile, the UN is saying we are going to die. So that's yeah. Reading from Associated Press. Deadly with extreme weather now, climate change is about to get so much worse. It is likely to make the world sicker, hungrier, poorer, gloomier, and way more dangerous in the next 18 years, with an unavoidable increase in risks, a new United Nations science report says. The IPCC report said Monday, if human-caused global warming isn't limited to just another couple tenths of a degree, an Earth now struck regularly by deadly heat, fires, floods, and drought in future decades will degrade in 127 ways, with some being, quote, potentially irreversible, end quote. Quote, the cumulative scientific evidence is unequivocal. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health, says the major report designed to guide world leaders in their effort to curb climate change. Delaying cuts in heat trapping carbon emissions and waiting on adapting to warming impacts, it warns, quote, will miss a brief and rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all, end quote. Today's children, who may still be alive in the year 2100, are going to experience 4 times more climate extremes than they do now, even with only a few more tenths of a degree of warming over today's heat. But if temperatures increase nearly 2 more degrees Celsius, and that's or 3.4 degrees Fahrenheit, they would feel 5 times the floods, storms, droughts, and heat waves, according to the collection of scientists at the IPCC. At least 3.3 billion people's daily lives are, quote, highly vulnerable to climate change, end quote, and 15 times more likely to die from extreme weather, the report says. Large numbers of people are being displaced by worsening weather extremes, and the world's poor are being hit by far the hardest, it says. More people are going to die each year from heat waves, diseases, extreme weather, air pollution, and starvation because of global warming, the report says. Just how many people die depends on how much heat-trapping gas from the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas gets spewed into the air, and how the world adapts to an ever hotter world, scientist says. Quote, climate change is killing people, said co-author Helen Adams of King's College London. Quote, yes, things are bad, but actually the future depends on us, not the climate. With every tenth of a degree of warming, many more people die from heat stress, heart and lung problems, from heat and air pollution, infectious diseases, illnesses from mosquitoes, and starvation, the authors say. The reports list mounting dangers to people, plants, animals, ecosystems, and economies, with people at risk in millions and billions and potential damages in the trillions of dollars. The report highlights people being displaced from homes, places becoming uninhabitable, the number of species dwindling, coral disappearing, ice shrinking, and a rising and increasingly oxygen-depleted and acidic oceans. Some of the risks can still be prevented or lessened with prompt action. Quote, today's IPCC report is an atlas of human suffering and a damning indictment of failed climate leadership, end quote. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in a statement, quote, with fact upon fact, this report reveals how people and the planet are getting clobbered by climate change, end quote. Yeah, so, again, like, you talk about climate change, And of course, normies, they don't like to hear about it. And they're just, oh, well, you're just killing my vibe, bro. Or, hey, there's not really an issue for me. My grandchildren are going to deal with this. I don't give a fuck about that. This is what we're dealing with, man. This is what we're dealing with. And, of course, the more you talk about it, the more problematic you are. Although, it doesn't matter whether or not these people believe it. They're going to live through it. Especially considering, I live in a state that has experienced multiple disasters that our infrastructure was not prepared for, and yet people are just like, oh, you're just being hyperbolic. You need to relax. You're always pessimistic, and you're always stuck thinking about bad things, making people afraid. It's like, bro, you should have been afraid a long time ago. Like, the fact that you're worried about me because I'm the one who's saying, hey, there's a dragon in the garage, that just speaks to how you're disconnected. When you can read stuff like this. Everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm saying is so easy to research. But of course, nobody wants to do that. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's from the AP. And then also, just considering the different weather events that have been occurring, especially now that we're heading into the summer, which is going to cause wildfires. And in New Mexico, there have been emergencies and fires and evacuations. So that's something to keep a close eye on. So I'm reading from a local news source, KOB, in Mora County, New Mexico. At the New Mexico Rural Summit at the Roundhouse, some are raising the alarm on a broken system for fire evacuees that's putting some people at a breaking point. Some evacuees are from one of the poorest areas in the entire country. One woman who is walking in their shoes says they are just not getting enough help. Susan Vigil volunteered to coordinate some of the evacuation efforts, but she is trying to juggle the needs of 24 families that are getting bumped from one hotel to the other. Quote, "We are not going to have any place to stay. I'm just going back tomorrow, This is what's happening," said Vigil. Vigil says she is hearing from some of the 28 families that have been forced from their homes near Mora, and who are now getting forced out of the OK Hotel just outside of Española. Vigil is now helping coordinate for some of the most impoverished evacuees en route to a different hotel in Albuquerque. "We were treated like stepchildren. There was no Red Cross here. There was no resources available," she said. She says the government has helped with paying for homes, but the need for medicine and money for gas has largely been filled by private donations from people in Española. All of this while her own family was forced from their home. 8 brothers, quote, 8 brothers and sisters and all of the families displaced from their homes. There's nowhere to go, she said. Vigil said. And the challenges for some are piling up. Quote, "I have not had the opportunity to grieve the loss of my sister during the whole crisis. My sister didn't want to evacuate from Chacon. She didn't want to leave. She was under so much stress. She said her sister Liz collapsed around the time they were evacuated. They don't know how she died. They were forced to cremate her. We haven't had any services, nothing. There was no closure. There is no end to this," Vigil said. Susan says one family told her this morning that there are not enough rooms at the Albuquerque hotel that they were headed to, and she says that she called the governor's office and they said they should show up and then we'll figure out as it goes. Wow. So, yeah. So this is what's going to happen, man. There's going to be more and more crises, environmental crises, and the government is not prepared for this. They're just not. They're not going to be able to meet this demand and this change. But yeah, man. Yeah, and it's certainly interesting, because I was kind of just in Albuquerque not too long ago, and Mora County is not too far off from Albuquerque. Yeah, it's near Santa Fe. So I didn't go to Santa Fe. I went to Albuquerque, and then from Albuquerque I went to is it Farmville or Aztec? Yeah, Farmington. There we go. Yeah, I went from Albuquerque to Farmington. I didn't go the Santa Fe route, but yeah, it sucks because New Mexico has a nice ecosystem environment. I'm not usually the biggest fan of desert environments, but New Mexico has a nice mix of forest and desert scenes, so it's an interesting area. And yeah, specifically this Mora County area was heavily forested and it's burning down. And so, yeah, this is just going to be a common trend now with the forest fires. I'm certainly trying to keep a close eye in my area because we had like a burn ban for a while, and then we had some rain. But I certainly feel like this summer is going to be very dry. Um, yeah, because it's very humid out here most of the time, but lately it's been pretty dry. So I feel like that's just going to be indicative of the weather this summer. Who knows? We could get flash flooding and hurricanes, and yeah, who knows? All sorts of things can happen. So that's just what's happening, and we have to keep a close eye on that. Um, yeah, but that's that's really just what I wanted to talk about for this episode. And I'm certainly glad for those who have been sticking with the show, and especially the newcomers. I'm glad that y'all are listening into this and hearing what I'm about. But yeah, I just uh, I'm just a guy who's recording and who's trying to get through school. In fact, like this semester, I had a very good semester despite my lack of attendance. My grades were very good. So yeah, I'm optimistic. Things are turning around. It always seems like when things are going good, something has to come up and then things fall apart again. So it's like I don't want to get too complacent, too comfortable because like something is going to happen. I just know it. It always does. So I just have to stay on edge and on guard. But, with this show and this program, I'm glad at least that I made some kind of breakthrough and have a bit of a larger audience base. And so, yeah, now I can really commit myself. But the only way I can fully commit myself is through your support and through your help. So that's why I'm talking about the Patreon. Again, the $1 donation is like 48 hours access to the podcast before public. And then there's the $5 tier. And that's what I plan to do with the video essay. So I plan to, it's going to take a long time. I can't promise to do it because you have all these content creators and they have set schedules. I have to focus on my life and do what I can there, and then I can release when I can release. Again, all I'm saying is the support would help. It would allow me to focus on this more full time, and then I can get that content out there and get y'all the information that you need. Especially because I would like to do a video essay, like as I was saying, it would be like a deep dive history like documentary. Yeah, I can do it. It's just it's just day-to-day life. That's the issue for me that I have to organize. And yeah, so that's all I have to say there, and that's where I'm gonna wrap up the episode. Again, I'm just thankful for y'all for listening, and I definitely want to build this program up to something worthwhile. Like Sagar and Jetty, he shared my tweet on his Instagram page. Now he didn't reach out to me, and nobody has reached out to me really. I don't blame them. I understand that I'm a bit of a pariah. I'm saying some pretty controversial things, but hey, we're reaching a tipping point, and somebody's got to say it. So I'm saying it. So yeah. So thanks again. Again, hang in there. Definitely do what you can to pass the time, and just try to make the world a better place. Don't be a shitty person. Don't make the world shitty. That's all I have to say there. But yeah, appreciate y'all. Love y'all. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.